Well, welcome back. We're about to delve into the world of geopolitics because just a few moments ago, Marco Rubio in Paris has said that the US will walk away from its efforts to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine unless there are clear signs of progress in the coming days. Let's have a look.
I think it's important to remind everybody that the Ukraine war is a terrible thing, but it's not our war. We didn't start it. The United States has been helping Ukraine over the last 3 years, and we want it to end. And so we've talked about outlines of both sides. I thought we had positive meetings yesterday. Obviously, the Ukrainians have to go back home. They have to run it by their president. They have to take into account, their views on all of this, and we hope to hear back from them very soon. So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on.
OK, well, let's try and unpack what that means with Colonel Simon Diggins. Simon, great to have you back on the programme. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, what does this mean, walk away? Does that mean just throw the towel in and let Putin get on with getting on and get what he wants? Because even with Europe having been given a wake-up call, I think everyone sort of recognises that the combined efforts of Europe won't be enough to stand up to Russia. Does this mean, actually, that there's not going to be any further negotiations about peace and the Kremlin will be punished? And which direction of travel do you see this going down?
It's very hard to tell at the moment. I think the difficulty for the Trump administration is they promised a kind of instant solution. They had a view of this war which did not identify properly that the aggressor was Putin. And as a result of that, I think they've been led down a very dangerous and rather negative path. It's not really up to the Americans to say to the Ukrainians, you're to give up your territory, you're not to have a self-defense, oh, by the way, you can get rid of your democratically elected government. But that's a situation they put themselves in. They have absolutely no leverage over Putin. That was given away by Trump at the beginning of the negotiations. He threatened at one stage in the last week or so to talk about putting tariffs on oil-consuming nations who've been taking the sort of shadow fleet oil from the Russians, but there's been no sign of that whatsoever. So he's impatient. He's a man who likes to make a deal, makes a deal quickly from there. But you ask a really good point about what that could mean. Is this sort of active neutrality, where they are genuinely neutral between the two, or will the Trump administration continue to provide the Ukrainians with, for example, with intelligence, even if they start to slow down or even cut off the military supplies? So there's still a lot to play for from here. I don't think it's helpful, this kind of I don't know, New York property dealers brinkmanship. This is a very complex war, killing a lot of people. And we need some patience and we need some intelligence. I don't think we're seeing either at the moment.
I mean, one assumes, if I sort of sit here logically and try and think how this might move forward, if America walks away and just lets it carry on and says to Europe, you do what you need to do, and Putin is revived and seems to think this is great, I'm going to go for more, surely that's going to put egg on the face of Donald Trump. He'll be seen as weak. He'll be seen as actually defeated by Putin. So one hopes, actually, that when he says, well, if there's no peace deal, we're going to walk away, what America might be doing behind the scenes is figuring out how they can then actually get involved more and help Ukraine. I mean, at least that's what I think we need to hope for.
It would be lovely if they do that, but you saw the body language when Steve Witkoff, who's the special representative of President Trump, went to go and see Putin. First thing he did was put his hand on his heart, as though he was greeting some long-lost kind of, great leader, and lots of photographs, and lots of shaking of hands, lots of publicity, basically for Putin. I think the difficulty we've had is that Trump sees himself as a kind of a mega world leader who can bestride the world. And on the other side of this world, there's the leader of Russia, and they all settle at the affairs of these minions beneath them from that. And that just simply isn't going to happen. The world is a very complex place, and it's a complex multipolar world. You have to recognize other people have a view, other people have a perspective. But you're absolutely right. This is now more about saving Trump's face. It is actually about solving the peace or ceasefire issue in Ukraine.
Well, one hopes actually when the ego comes to land that the ego realises that it doesn't want to be bested by Putin. Now, talking about this sort of multipolar world and the people sort of in the anti-Western axis, one thing that America is seeming to take seriously is China. Of course, Russia's best buddies. They need to wake up to that pretty soon. But here in the United Kingdom, we're being warned that electric cars made in China could pose a threat to national security as they're vulnerable to Chinese spying. This isn't the first time we've heard this. Could Beijing remotely control your electric car? And it sort of seems, oh, well, that's a bit far-fetched. But what we do know is that China is a state that wants to get ahead unfairly. It wants to get ahead, whether it's through dumping things on the cheap. It wants to get ahead through nicking ideas and reproducing them to undercut markets. That actually its tactics are very often covert. And yet, despite this as being the official defence assessment by the government spy lab, we seem to have a government that is tripping over itself to cosy up to Beijing.
Yeah, what they're doing, they're basically prepared to compromise on our national security in exchange for another 1% on the GDP growth rate. I mean, GDP growth rate in this country is frankly, glacial in terms of its progress, and they see a way of improving that is by having an open arrangement with the Chinese. We've been very wary of this for a long time. You'll recall that the Americans called time during the Biden administration on the attempt to have Huawei putting its materials into our 5G network for all the very reasons we've got here, and this could also happen with as you saw within cars. Now that might seem like a sort of a remote an unlikely sort of way of doing business, but we saw the way the Israelis use electronics to wipe out the Hezbollah leadership. It's there. It's a possibility. Cyber attacks, information operations, denial of service through electronic means are all there, and we genuinely have to be aware of it. It may not be something that the Chinese government wants to do immediately, but if you can put forward 2-3 years' time a scenario where perhaps they're putting pressure on Taiwan, even potentially invading it in 2027 onwards, then what a good way to actually completely throw the West upside down and basically turn their cars off. And that's the kind of thing that we need to be wary of for the future. So yes, they're not just a competitor. They're a strategic competitor who are prepared to use force, threat of force, cyber information, disinformation in order to get their own way. So we should be extremely wary of dealing with them in such issues.
Colonel Simon Diggins, thank you for joining me.